Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Star Trek Voyager, Season 2, Episode 15, Threshold. So this is probably one of the greatest episodes of Voyager, or of Star Trek in general. Like, I love this episode. And I know most people hate this episode, and I think I read somewhere, like, it was voted one of the top 3 worst episodes of the entire franchise. But I love this episode. So I was a kid when this episode came out, and I remember like watching it for the first time. And as a kid watching this, I was so enthralled. I was like, this is so cool. And then, like, I don't know, maybe it's just the nostalgia, but I've always held on to that. And just like talking about this episode makes me smile because so many people hate this episode. And again, it's one of those, like, you know, if somebody talks about a movie and they're like, oh, this movie was awful, it was terrible, it was the worst movie ever made, and like you really set your expectations really low, and then when you go and watch it, you're like, man, it wasn't that bad because your expectations were so low. That's kind of how I feel about this episode. Is so many people hate this episode that I watch it and I'm like, this is great, like it is so much fun. And that's the thing, is I watch this episode more as a comedy than anything. It reminds me a lot of The Fly, like the one with Jeff Goldblum in it. Even like the way Paris starts transforming and stuff, and like especially the scene where like he takes his tongue out, like it gives me the shivers to watch that scene. And like I said, it reminds me of The Fly in the part where like Jeff Goldblum like vomits on his food, and he's like, "That's gross." And like I loved it. I thought it was so good, and it was so well done. And then I posted a meme in this like a long time ago where it's kind of making fun of Captain Janeway in the same way as Daenerys from Game of Thrones, and where she has like 500 titles, and it's like searcher for coffee and stuff like that, and one of them was like Queen of the Salamander people, and it was so great. Like I love this episode so much. So, I'm just going to talk about how much I love it. Like, this whole video is just me. I love this episode. For those who haven't seen it or don't know what I'm talking about, this is episode where Paris comes up with the ability to travel faster than warp 10, which already doesn't make sense. For those who have watched my videos, starting with the original series, at one point in the original series, they went like warp 35 or something. And I even commented how I don't think the original series warp matched the Next Generation's warp. I think that's when we hit like trans warp, which like for every warp 10 of the original series is like warp 1 for the Next Generation or something. I don't know. But even in the Next Generation, they hit, I think, like warp 13. Like we've gone faster than warp 10 before. But this whole episode is about, like, just talking about it makes me smile. This whole episode is about Paris figuring out how to go faster than warp 10. And when he does, he almost becomes like this non-corporeal being who is everywhere at the exact same time. And they go through the computer data, and like there's all of these like this new information that the shuttlecraft like was able to acquire to kind of help them navigate the Delta Quadrant, which I get it. They need some sort of excuse to get more information. But as we continue through the episode, it turns out that going faster than warp 10 makes Paris start evolving. Like what would take millions of years of human evolution like happens in one day. And Paris just starts evolving, and like his hair falls out, like I said, his tongue falls out, and all sorts of other stuff. And it's very, very similar to The Fly, where he just starts mutating and stuff. And at one point they think he died, but he didn't, and he comes back to life. And then the ending of the movie is Paris kidnapping Janeway, making her go faster than warp 10. I can't even talk about this episode. And the two of them like go to this far off planet where finally Chakotay and Tuvok and them find them, and they have like somehow like almost instantly reproduced, and they have like 3 little babies. And they decide to leave the babies there, but like basically turn Paris and Janeway back into their former selves. Like, this episode is so ludicrous. It's brilliant. Like, it is so good. Like, who would come up with this? It's so good. And evidently, a million years from now, human beings will look like salamanders. And I remember, I think I even had the toy of Paris with his babies. Like, it was so good. For those who have seen this one, what did you guys think? Like, obviously, I think that it's such a bad episode that it's actually really good. But what did you guys think? Did you think it was like just awful and you can't stand watching it? A lot of people consider this episode non-canon, like they just don't even, when they do binges, they just skip over it. So let me know what you guys think about this episode. Like I said, I really enjoy it just because it's so ludicrous that I love it. It's kind of a break. And I've said before, like most of the first half of season 2 is so slow and it's so boring and it's so bad that like this episode is just so what the fuck happened that I really enjoyed it. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for subscribing to me. It means a lot to me. And I will see you guys next time for another one of my favorite episodes, Meld.